is Mr. William Beaton, who's the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Savings Bank of Baltimore. Savings Bank is a marvelous supporter of the Council. It's a great deal of pleasure for me to introduce Mr. Beaton.
Not at all necessary. You all know me, and I have not learned to expect that as yet. Thanks for the flattering words. You're much too kind. And I want to thank our guests this afternoon for allowing me a few moments to talk about the Baltimore Council on Foreign Affairs. Dr. Byrd mentioned our support of the Council's activities. We don't support it, that is the Savings Bank of Baltimore, out of a sense of charity or magnanimity at all. We support it as a matter of self-interest, selfishly. We believe that the long-term interests of the businesses are better served when the citizens of a community are better informed on national and international issues. Now, I don't believe that can be disputed. Well-informed, educated community serves the best interest of business. The Baltimore Council on Foreign Affairs provides a forum for discussing these issues. It's the only forum that I know of in this area set up to do just that. Appeal to the interests of those people who believe, as we do, that it's important that we know what's going on about in the world. And as a major seaport, the city of Baltimore, I think it's doubly important that this community of citizens are aware of what's happening throughout the world, not just what they read in the Sun paper. Joe Stern is sitting over here. Probably one of the greatest guys you ever want to meet. I didn't mean that at all.
Yes, you did, but that's okay too.
Okay.
Mayor, thanks.
Thank you. The quality of the programs.
You're on a roll, Bill.
The quality of the programs that we have put on since our founding, 2 years ago, have been superior. They've been unparalleled. To match our program with any council in the United States. They've been unparalleled, starting with Mr. Krasinski at the Hilton Hotel, as our first speaker. And I could go down and list the names of all the ambassadors that we have had. The ambassador to Egypt. And then when the ambassador to Israel found out the ambassador to Egypt was going to be, he wanted to be here. Came over 3 weeks later, we heard from the counter argument from the ambassador to Israel. And we can go on and name the number of outstanding people we had, people both in the business as well as the private sectors of our economy, including the Washington correspondents and Sun papers. Therefore, we, Savings Bank of Baltimore, and many other businesses in this community, believe in this institution. And in addition to that, it adds additional recognition to Baltimore. Now, as a member of the fundraising committee, trustee of the Baltimore Council on Foreign Affairs, I note that we're going to be soliciting support for this fine institution for 82-83 beginning of September. Now, the next year is going to be another outstanding year, and financial needs are just as great now as they have been in the preceding years. I urge you to respond supportingly. If contacted by a fundraiser, I want you to peruse some of the literature we have out here in the lobby. And you can always call our council office, right around the corner, 21st floor of this building. Greg Halpin supports our program. Pay a terrific price for that office around there. that much, and we did. Now, with that said, allow me to turn the attention to the reason for being here today. To honor a distinguished American, William Emerson Brock, who currently is the United States Trade Representative, with the rank of Ambassador. We look forward to his discussion of American trade policy. Ambassador Brock is known to many of you as Bill Brock, the United States Representative and Senator from Tennessee, and more recently, Chairman of the National Committee of the Republican Party. And as representative, he served on many committees, including the Banking and Currency Committee, Joint Economic Committee. As Senator, he served on the Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs Committee, Finance Committee, and Government Operations. And you're all aware of the effective job which he did as Chairman of the Republican Party, starting in 1977, ending up last year, 1981. At present, as United States Trade Representative, Ambassador Brock chairs the Cabinet-level Trade Policy Committee, serves as Vice Chairman of the Overseas Private Investment Corporation, as a non-voting member of the Export-Import Bank, the National Advisory Committee, International Monetary and Financial Policy. But the most important, Ambassador Brock, President's Chief Trade Advisor and International Trade Negotiator. We are honored, therefore, as members of a trade-oriented city, especially pleased to welcome Ambassador William Brock to our council. Ambassador Brock.
I'm not sure whether this mic is helpful or not, is it? Never know how people are going to answer this back in the room if they can't hear the question. But thank you for the invitation. Let me take a third of our remaining time to sketch out some of the objectives we have in trade policy right now, and then go to whatever questions you have on this or any other subject you want to raise. I guess the frustration I feel in this particular job is in part due to the sense that we've gotten awfully good at self-criticism and awfully good at being negative of late in this country. It seems to be it's affecting a lot of other countries as well. But we do have economic problems. We've got a lot of unemployment. We've got very high rates of inflation. Or have had. And it seems that it's just almost as night follows day that when you've got economic difficulty, the first reaction is to call for the imposition of new barriers to trade. It's so illogical that you wonder why it happened. But I guess if you look at the difficulty that the Congress is having wrestling with its budget right now and trying to resolve that problem, and you know that every time they go home they're catching the victims from their labor union guys or businesses about the state of the economy, that it's sort of convenient to get up on the floor of the Congress and back the Japanese one more time, or somebody else. It's a deferral or an effort to place the problem somewhere out of reach. The problem is that it really is a very dangerous thing to do. Because if it is true that our political difficulties here, Europe, Japan, wherever, are primarily of economic origin, and if the economy's difficulty stems in large degree from a state of virtually no growth, then it seems to me to be eminently logical that the way to solve the economic problem in order to solve the political problem is to restore growth. And if you're going to restore growth, you got to do more business. And if you're going to do more business, you can't do it by imposing barriers. You got to take them down, not put them up. And it seems to me that of all times, when we ought to be talking about freeing up the process and letting it work, competitive juices flow, it ought to be in times of greatest economic adversity and the temptation to do the contrary. Precisely what we have decided to do in this administration are obviously going to resist the temptation to support any protectionist action in Congress this year. But I think of greater consequence, we have decided that it's time for the United States to lead, and to lead very aggressively to get the world to start focusing more positively on the opportunities that trade affords us, and on the need for improvement in the world trading system. I use the word lead advisedly because there isn't any other country that can do it. But we have to say what the course of trade relationships will be, and we're going to say it, and we expect others to follow. It just won't work any other way. We will try to work as carefully as we can to accommodate the political circumstances other countries have. But we feel very strongly, I do, that it is terribly important for the political community of the trading nations of the world to get with it, start being positive and start being specifically with some of the problems that we see. They're very easily defined. We have not yet completed some of the agreements that we've written over the last 7 rounds of trading negotiations. We don't have, for example, an adequate code to eliminate trade distorting actions in agriculture. It's always been sort of a separate item off on the side, a stepchild in the trading system. But everybody is doing agricultural trade, and so when they're not rules, the potential for irritation, for abrasion, just continues to grow. And we have that example right now very much before us in our relationship with Europe. If we're going to solve those kind of problems, we've got to do it by writing rules of the game that will allow for free trade to the extent we can achieve it, and then we have disputes to allow for a dispute settlement mechanism that lets us solve our problems amicably. We haven't completed the Tokyo round in terms of writing a code of conduct in the so-called safeguards area. The safeguards are the actions you take when you impose protectionism. And because we don't have any adequate rules of the game, countries can impose a protectionist regime, say that it's covered by the rules of the international agreement because it's in the defense of an emergency circumstance at home, and then keep that for the next 20 years. And there's no discipline to get them out of it, and we need to establish that. And that's a priority for us. But perhaps the largest priority we have in our policy is to seek to get this ministerial meeting of the GAP, which we've asked for, which is now going to be held in November, for the first time in almost 10 years, since 1973. We will have a meeting at that level. We're going to ask our trading partners to look at some of the areas that are simply not now covered by trade law. For 35 years, we've been evolving trade rules as if the exchange could only apply to something tangible, something you see, touch, taste, shirts, shoes, automobiles, steel, some tangible product. We never wrote rules that would liberalize trade in services, non-tangible goods. but I would wager that 2/3 or better of the people in this room are in the services business, not in tangible goods production. Shipping, consulting, engineering, banking, insurance, accounting, lawyers, movie making, data transmission, all of those are services, and they're not covered by the rules. 2/3 of the American people work in the services field. It is important to us. $35 billion a year net income comes into this country because of its, that's the current surplus we have in services industry. And they're no rules. And I find it difficult to believe that people can say we can have a world of expanding trade, liberal trade in goods, if you have nothing but barriers in the services area. You've got to ship your product, you've got to insure it, you've got to finance it, you've got to transmit the data related to the transaction, you've got to have wires, unfortunately. I go so
That would have been.
now you're really bringing it to hurt, right? Got me employees. Okay, so the point is made. We don't have a regime to regularize the exchange of services, to have rules that hopefully would lead us in the direction of globalization and the expansion of trade in those areas. And we simply are going to have more and more trade tension, more and more trade distortion, and those things lead to protectionist actions that bring trade to a stop unless you establish some code of conduct, and knowing that even with a code that's clean and simple and understandable, you're still going to have disputes, so you have to have a place where you can go and settle the disputes with some third party mechanism. So that's a major priority for the United States government. We've been pressing it for about a year, and for about a year we've been almost alone. We're beginning to get some support finally from Europe, from Japan, from some of our trading partners elsewhere, and we're beginning to make progress. Another area we're putting major emphasis on is in the area of high technology. It's encompassed both by goods and services. We just want to highlight it because things are happening in this world that are so exciting and so fundamentally important to our long-term real growth opportunities, jobs, real income in the high-tech area. We face an incredibly different world 5 years, maybe 10 years from now, than that which we now inhabit. And we have thus to be prepared for it, and thus try to write the rules of the game so as to be as flexible and accommodative of the movement of this technology. Because we're talking now about not exchanging goods, we're talking about exchanging ideas. And there's no limit to that if you keep government out of the way. But all of a sudden, we're already finding out the incredible sophistication that governments have in stopping things from happening. And just a couple of examples. The Bundespost in Germany. Germany is one of the great free market countries in the world. Really actively so. It's a fabulous country. But the Bundespost controls all postal affairs and communications in the country. And they had a regulation, that was proposed regulation, which said that if you have a subsidiary operating in Germany that wants to transmit its reports and all of its data to the parent company in London or Tokyo or Rochester, New York, you have to process that raw data in Germany before you can transmit it. Well, that's utterly ridiculous. Satellites are sitting up there. You can batch this information up and send it right back down for batch processing in your computers in central office. Much more efficient, but that's a barrier to trade. Others have suggested that maybe since all this information is leaving the country, because we're never talking about what's coming in, only what's leaving. But since it's all leaving, maybe we ought to put a tax on the information leaving. It's been proposed. Serious. talking about freedom of the press. You really get down to it. How do you tax bits of information, electronic information, go up by satellite and come back down? Well, they thought about taxing just in terms of the number of bits of information, electronic impulses, but then they got smarter. They said, what we really are, I mean, some of that information isn't worth much. Some of it's worth a lot. We ought to tax the value. How do they determine value? They got to take it off and print it out and evaluate it. Wow, talk about privacy, talk about security, the patent information, new technology, communication. That's the kind of thing that you can see the downside. You can also see the upside. That's kind of unbelievable that we are capable of doing in this world now, and we'll be more capable of doing that probably in years if we can keep the system open. That's the point. The last item I wanted to mention in terms of our agenda for this and hopefully in the next couple of years, and then a bit of questions. One point of emphasis I don't think we have stressed in this country. I don't think we've even thought about it. We talk so much about Japan, Europe. I wonder if we realize what an opportunity we have with the developing world, not only for our benefit, but for theirs. And that is to our long-term benefit. So it is sort of a rolling opportunity of mutual benefit. In 1962, I guess 20 years ago, we were doing $7 billion worth of business with the developing world. This year, this last year, we did $89 billion worth of business with the developing world. We now do more business with the developing countries than we do with Europe and Japan combined. Combined. The growth rate is well over 20% a year. It's spectacular. That's compound. 40% of all our manufacturing exports now to developing countries. And we're just touching the tip of the iceberg. Problem. We wanted those countries, the Brazils of the world, to come into the trading system. We wanted them so bad to join the gap, to be a participant. So we said, come in as you are. You ever get invited to a come as you are party? Did you go the way you were when you were called? Different question. You probably didn't go the way you were when you were called if you were ever invited to that church. That's the point. But all these countries came just like they were. And how were they? They're tariffs. 100, 200, 300% tariffs. Tariffs with barriers. They had quotas. They had a whole range of sophisticated devices to keep out competition because it was a conventional wisdom in the 50s, the 60s, that these countries would begin to evolve. That their only hope was to be totally protected internally so that they could flower their domestic industry. And let import substitution be the primary objective of government. In other words, if they weren't able to produce cars, they had to start producing cars. And when they were produced steel, they had to be able to produce steel. So that meant they had to prohibit steel from coming in outside. They had to drive to a plant and make it there. And then put all of these barriers up to keep the products coming from outside. We're beginning to stride into those barriers pretty rapidly now. And they're beginning to fight us and them. Because what do barriers do? They increase their price, their cost. They reduce their level of efficiency, and they retard their rate of growth. All of a sudden, the fallacy of the original argument is being demonstrated in actual experience. But we don't have any opportunity to negotiate those barriers away. They're already in the system. And now we're in a position where the Congress is on my back saying, hey, Brazil is competitive. Quit giving them preferential access to the U.S. market under your GSP program, which we've got for all these poor countries. Brazil's not so poor. Well, tell that to the Brazilians and see what they say. They say, wait a minute, we're not so poor as Bangladesh, but we are sure not so good off as the United States, Japan, and Canada and Germany. And don't throw us into the water and make us swim all at once. So they're sort of tricks and clean. If I don't graduate them, the Congress is on my back and they pass a law requiring us to throw them right into the swim. And we've heard of that. If we don't graduate them and leave them with preferential access, they will then be able to pretty well subsume the whole preferential market here, and that means the poorer countries really won't be able to compete, so they don't have growth opportunity. Something's wrong. The system is structured inflexibly so that we can't accommodate the fact that there really is a difference between some of these countries in this levels of development, and there will be for the next 200 years. So what we have proposed, I was to start thinking about, is the possibility of a North-South negotiating round to try to deal with those barriers that they have, and in exchange for getting major reduction in their barriers, give them some continued preferential access to this and other industrial markets on a non-partisan basis. I think it's a pretty exciting thing because I think it offers the prospect of a real expansion of world trade. And I think that is a mutual thing of interest. Anyway, I've gone on a little longer than I intended, but that's sort of a smorgasbord butterfly touching down some of the issues we're messing with in the trade right now. Let me stop and go to whatever issues you want to hone on to the question.
Maybe you can't diplomatically respond to this. I'm an academic, not in the business community, but yesterday I attended a luncheon of the organization called SMERDA, which is the International Traders of the Baltimore and the Washington, Maryland, Virginia. I was really very surprised at the depth of the passion they showed in criticizing our government for the support which it gave international traders through the State Department, Department of Commerce in overseas countries, particularly in Latin America. They felt they weren't getting current information, they weren't getting help, and they weren't getting support. And I just wondered, I'm not asking you to criticize other branches of government. I was surprised at the depth of feeling about their lack of support in their trading business. These were mostly small traders.
Sure. Okay. I have never been reluctant to criticize other branches of government. I don't like to now. But, I do think, in fairness, I want to point out some of the changes that have occurred in the last 15 months. First of all, the Congress recognized that the State Department, in their judgment, was not providing adequate support to the American businessmen overseas. So they took away from the State Department the right to run that program, and they gave it to the Commerce Department and the Foreign Commercial Service. Literally been in place just less than a year, and is still being populated, or people being put into it. So I think it's a little bit strong to criticize too much yet. Secondly, Al Haig did something that I don't think the Secretary of State has done, certainly hasn't in my lifetime. That is that at our request back early last year, he sent a wire cable to every ambassador saying that a part of your evaluation will be based upon your willingness and effectiveness in serving U.S. business interests overseas. Heretofore, the 2 million of those individuals that thought they were above this grubby little business of business. And that instruction is explicit, and hopefully has made some difference and will continue to. There are still people in the field in the State Department who have that attitude. Frankly, if we can identify them, I think everyone would like to have some suggestions as to the people that are not being responsible, maybe some changes to occur. Lastly, all the criticism, some of it justified, I'd like to turn the corner and criticize American business. There's an awful lot of whining that goes on in this country. When people expect government to do for them, that which should be done for themselves. Now, we are doing a pretty decent job of improving the data and some of these other services. But there are two cotton-picking little business people in this country sitting here bragging about the Japanese that haven't done over it still. And I do think that we need to have a little bit more aggressiveness on our own part in marketing our product. We've got a better price and better product in many areas. And I think it behooves us to complain unless we've done a lot better job of going out there and getting up our own stuff and doing some work overseas. And in this sense, it seems to me that if business people really have a complaint, that they ought to start by telling us. They've got the most pro-business administration of this century. And if they don't know it, they're not smart enough to be selling anything overseas. I'll take advantage of it. There's one over here.
There's something in the paper this morning that may be some voluntary restraints on steel generated by the government. Do you see this happening and as a result perhaps less manufacturing by the
I don't know whether it's going to happen or not. There have been occasional discussions about the possibility of having discussions. But I have yet to see any proposal by the European community that would resolve the matter in a fashion that could be accepted both there and here. Maybe they'll have one that I haven't seen, but I have not seen that. And, I think it's going to be extremely difficult. Steel is a serious problem between these two trading partners. They are subsidizing in many of those countries. The subsidies have been put into this country well below their cost and ours. There are 100,000 U.S. steel workers out of work. Some of those steel workers are out of work because of government subsidies of foreign steel that did come in. And our steel workers have a right to expect the United States government to enforce the law. The law is clear, and so are the international agreements. You shall not subsidize, and you shall not do so in such a fashion as to displace your partner's employees. And we're going to enforce the law. That's precisely what we're doing, as fairly as we know how to do it. And I guess I think we ought to let the system work. It may be that we do have to consider Europe's economic condition. They're too close to us, and they're too good one for us not to. And we may have to find some way of trying to accommodate that. But if we do it and we don't deal with the problem, which is the subsidy, an enormous subsidy that is going on in country after country over there, if we don't deal with that, then we are making a terrible mistake, and we've done exactly what every administration has done before, and that's try to paper over the problem and not get honest and solve it. And if I have my way, we're not going to do that. Go ahead. That's it first.
You've been engaged in some serious negotiations in the Tokyo round, in which you hope to resolve certain problems which I think, unfortunately, still persist. Short of protectionism, Mr. Ambassador.
Oh. Well, I've had a lot of conversations with the Japanese over the last 15 months. They have made certain public commitments. They have taken certain public actions. In January, they announced moving ahead of their tariff reduction schedule by 2 years. In February, they addressed 67 so-called non-tariff barriers, which were, in neither case was adequate to the concern that we have expressed. I met most recently with the foreign minister and the trade minister in Paris and in Charlotte last week, outside of Paris, and have suggested them certain fairly fundamental things to be done. I think there is a prospect that action will occur and that it will be substantive and important. The reason I think that is because I don't know how anybody could contemplate the insanity of not solving the problem. If the problem is not addressed fundamentally and in such a fashion as to be perceived as fundamental by both countries in the immediate future, actions are going to be taken here and probably in Europe as well. That will not be in anybody's interest. And I just simply think that's an unacceptable possibility. I hope that they will come with a decision. We tell them what we think is necessary. They know, and we'll see what they are capable of doing. But I think they are honestly trying. I do want to give the Prime Minister particular credit for the leadership. He has made some very unapologetic statements. Part of the problem is that the difficulty goes beyond government action. If the Japanese government does everything we ask them to do, there still is going to be a significant trade imbalance because of car travels, public attitudes. The business community is very insecure about letting in American products. Just as friends of other businessmen who may be producing the same product, there's a sense of Japan is a strange mixture these days. It has made incredible progress, and it's proud of that, and it has a right to do. But mixed with a little bit of that arrogance, a little bit of paranoia. Can we really afford to open up? A Japanese businessman says, you know, if your products were on our shelves, they would buy anything but American. They think it's better quality. Where have you heard that before?
You made a comment on how large trade is going on and all that stuff these days. My reading is that a lot of this trade has been with papers called soft loans. I read also that a lot of banks are worried about them, and some banks say they're a little shaky because of it. What's your comment?
I think we have run a considerable risk with the amount of loans outstanding both in the Eastern Bloc and in the rest of the world as well. Those loans came more as a consequence of the explosion of energy prices and countries' attempt to cope with that doubling and then doubling and then doubling again in 8 years for the basic energy resource. It was not so much for soft loans for the sale of a consumer product like a pair of shoes. But whatever, the loans were made. They are, in many cases, obviously excessive. There is a hazard to the world financial structure, and I think it is terribly important that our financial institutions and others around the world be very cautious for a while until we restore some rate of growth and can deal with that problem, because it is very, very crucial and very delicate right now.
Could you tell us what, if any, effect you think the prices of commodities like Ireland, U.S. trade, in South America, or otherwise?
Sometimes I think the United States has more to lose in the Falklands than anybody else. And that's why I get so frustrated with what appears to be an exercise in stupidity. I don't know how to get out of it. I don't think anybody else does. We have tried so hard to be a mediator. But I do think that we have suffered certainly what its long-term impact will be, perhaps more depending on what happens and now all of the problems, more so than what has already happened. But if matters get much worse, I thought it would be very, very painful for us. So it's not that kind. Well, I was in Buenos Aires about 10 weeks ago, and was there again, and Rio and Lima, Peru. The feeling throughout South America is very strong. And there were young people lined up to volunteer to fight for Argentina. In other countries, not in Argentina. But obviously they were there. There is a sense that this is the last colonial vestige in this hemisphere, and the South American nations have to that time. And that puts them in the position of questioning U.S. actions, whether or not we were sufficiently even-handed, whether or not we could have been more constructive by staying even-handed. I don't know how to be more specific in terms of what the trade impact would be, because I don't know how to quantify that. I really don't. I think it may not be serious, but it does likely depend on some resolution of the problem before it was totally backwards.
Mr. Ambassador, I have a two-pronged question. One is of a general nature, and the other one is of a specific category. What, in your view, is the impact of the OPEC money, OPEC dollar, for the United States, OPEC, Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC? What, in your view, is the impact of their dollar on the American economic system and its ability to help the developing world? That is my prong number one. I shoot the other one when you finish.
This country has, in order to maintain its own economic base, has to have oil. We have done a remarkably good job of closing conservation upon ourselves. Mostly private sector response. So we still have to import $75 billion worth of oil a year. That is a net drain of our productive resources. Net. Right off the top. That's money that can be put into a new plant, R&D, technology, growth, which generates jobs and revenue for people as well as for the United Government. So obviously it has the drain of that resource has had a major impact upon our ability to be helpful to developing countries. We still produce close to half of all of our required oil from our own resources. So if we have been damaged, the poorer countries of the world have been desperately damaged, and that's where we go back to the debt question that the gentleman raised here. Now, you've got the combination. You have reduced the capital resources and the capital pool of virtually all industrial nations. What does that do when you reduce the capital pool and you increase the demand? You increase the price of money. So interest rates have gone up. So now we hit the poorer countries twice. We hit them to buy the oil, and then we double their interest rates when they have to pay for that oil over a period of time. And then lastly, of course, you reduce the ability of the developed countries to be helpful. One comment in all fairness. It's easy to blame OPEC for all of our problems, but the drain of oil purchases from our economy in the last decade has been less than the drain of our productive resources caused by government in this country being unwilling or incapable or unable to live within its means and financing itself by deficit. So if you want to get mad at the air, you got to start talking about the air in Washington.
The second prong, which is more specific, during your remarks, you indicated, if I understood you correctly, that the underdeveloped countries are invited to come as they are. Am I right? That is like the priest at the communion table, telling the people, come whether you're a sinner or a righteous man, come as you are. Why the desire? The heart of Africa. We understand that any country that influences development in Zaire will be in control of the heart of Africa. Why did Zaire refuse all American aid? If I understood that a few days ago. They said they have nothing to do with American help. Why did that happen?
I'm not sure that I understood the question.
You want me to repeat it? Maybe I speak English with Swahili accent.
You're speaking a lot better than I speak Swahili. Are you saying that Zaire?
Zaire recently declared that it will no longer be receptive to American aid because they felt that America has done something to them in their judgment. They said they have refused all American aid, financial aid, all kinds of aid.
Well, I don't know why they did it, but there's plenty of countries that would be happy to have whatever's left. I really don't know how to comment on the question other than that.
Well, maybe that hit you by suddenly. You are not informed on that.
No, well, I wasn't informed that they had turned down the
All right. I'll tell you about it after.
An awful lot of listening. In this country, there is not a strong enough emphasis on the impact of exports on our economy. I think a healthy balance of payments generally is a factor contributing to a healthy investment economy. In many ways, it's like a tail wagging the dog. I also think that an awful lot of things that happen in the government are focused upon defensive mechanisms. I mean, too often we are talking about something or protection. I think everyone here knows that exports are really good for the economy. And my question is, what can and what will the government do to provide direct economic assistance to U.S. business trying to export, in particular, small business folks? I don't need anything like subsidization.
What is economic assistance other than a subsidy?
It can be in the form of a short-term loan. It can be in the form of a tax incentive. It does. To export is expensive.
Okay.
It's competed against other companies abroad. The governments go out there and provide them with certain incentives. And the small company does not have those capabilities to take out.
First of all, I completely accept the premise on the importance of exports, and I constantly talk about how many jobs are involved. Exports, the growth in our export industries is 4 times as fast in employment terms as growth in domestic industry. It's been a spectacular performance area for us in the last decade, and it's fundamentally important to our economic well-being. You're precisely right on the point there. I don't think you can argue in these days of budget constraints, as you have not, for massive government subsidies of business to compete overseas, but we have done some things. For example, we have multiplied the tax exemption for Americans working overseas, and that's our sales force, by a factor of 4. That's a major change. When the previous administration raised the taxes on Americans working overseas, in 1 year, 39% of all the Americans working overseas came home. You're not going to sell your goods unless you got salesmen out there. Secondly, I do get a little weary that Congress griping about trade. We've had 3 or 4 bills before the Congress to allow us to compete more effectively. Modification of Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, Export Trading Company legislation like that, and they're still stuck in some parliamentary thicket in the House, or some political thicket, if you will, which gets a little bit under my skin because I get tired of the whining. If they want us to do more business, then let's change the innovations that we put on ourselves. And I frankly would love to see that happen. Lastly, we've tried very hard to reduce the export credit subsidy area by negotiation. We had, I thought, an agreement 10 days ago in the World Trade Community. Apparently, we did not, at least at the moment. 1 or 2 nations may refuse to join the consensus, which means there's no agreement. If that's the case, then we ought to take another look at whether or not we go finally back into competition direction bank or some similar device. Lastly, we do have some support programs for small business, very consciously. Small business loan program, export-import bank, primarily a guarantee program, which allows the company to go through export, through a commercial bank and get a guarantee to back it up. The risk is great, and it helps. I wouldn't mind doing some more.
I mean, that program is for both domestic and international.
No, that's for export sales only.
I don't know, I think there are an awful lot of small American companies, and there's an awful lot of good products. It's very expensive to emerge upon an international market campaign for a small company. A large company, they have an in-house mechanism.
Let me tell you something. There are 20,000 firms that have been identified in this country that make a better quality product than anybody else in the world at a better price, and they're not selling overseas.
Right.
Now, that isn't because it's more expensive. That is because it's easier to do business in Dubuque than it is in Osaka. And until we change our attitude, not one thing that government can do is going to change like that. If we decide we want to compete, we're going to have to get out there and do it. And with all respect, we are providing enormous facilities to try to help. We've got foreign commercial services offices all around the world. We've got commercial service offices here in the United States to tell the small businessmen where the market opportunity is, to do market analysis, to create all kinds of data. I think those are actions that government can do legitimately, because you're dealing with international data gathering. That's a normal function that we have to do anyway. But we can't take that horse and make it drink.
In order that we finish on time, we'll have to limit it to about 3 more questions. Perhaps Professor Flax would take the first.
I just want to make a statement.
There is a program called that was passed called the Small Business Expansion Development of 1985. That is providing $1.5 billion all over the country for export trading companies, export management companies, basically firms to allow small exporters with developing market plans, basically existing in a different specific market, existing goods. There's also a program for minority businesses. There's a $2 million program. Today, it's just minority businesses likewise. The small business program and the minority business program, the minority business program is that we want to generate $50 million in sales over the next 12 months. In all markets, in particular, I'm looking at natural jobs that the developing countries that very, very little market focus. Likewise, the small business program is looking to generate about $75 as well. The program that is provided by the ICA, the $155 million, is generally been syndicated to run for the next 2 years, and then the minority business also
I think that's great.
Thank you very much. In order that others can ask their questions, we'll make sure that you get a chance to drink the gentleman's further in the session. So, Professor Fox?
I just want to make that one statement. Dr. Phil, I'm glad you did. The question about it. I have been involved in the export business since my days before it was legitimized. And I mean that very sincerely. Because the only people who were able to latch on to something that I said were people from foreign countries who understood that exporting was the lifeblood of their economy. Therefore, they had an attitude in which they related exporting not as surplus business, nice business to have when the chips were down, but as an integral part of their overall business. We have had a Marshall Plan mentality, whereas if you ask yourself, why is it that Americans that had a 20-year head start on the rest of the world, when countries were locked in to buy from the United States, if we had developed customer relationships, customer loyalty, why do we now feel threatened by countries that we have opted for to develop, to stand on their own 2 feet to do business with us? How many of you remember the old cry, trade, not aid, years ago? When they say, hey, when are these countries going to stand on their own 2 feet and do business with us on commercial terms instead of having AID or the old ICA or the FAO, all the other acronyms, the granddaddy of the Marshall Plan, which is now the AID? Well, here they are, knocking on our doors. And the Japanese say, and they're correct in this, we read your textbooks, you sell them. We read them and we put into practice all of the various concepts. And that's exactly what they have done in that respect. In a very short acronym that I some years ago, some of the problems that exist with us, and not with them, just as Pogo said. I've sighted the enemy, and the enemy is us. All right? Myopia, knowing what business we're in. Inertia, complacency, indolence, xenophobia, traditionalism, and ethnocentrism have all been the main barriers to our doing business overseas. And no amount of legislation is going to make us more competitive.
You got it.
All due respect to the professor, that's a committee targeted the high technology sector, generator of exports, and spread among them to their American PR. What are we doing to tackle this basic methodology that's used clearly in violation of our own through technology sharing, coordination of resources, government organizations? This seems to me to be a bigger problem than just throwing down trade barriers on Americans.
Okay, good point. And right also, that there are business practices that would, you'd be in jail in this country if we could beat that here. No question about it. 2 or 3 things. First of all, we have sought the change in the practice and the change in the law for a while. Secondly, we've asked for the right to go to court to protect our rights, which is an extension of the judicial opportunity that we afford them here. Thirdly, we are trying to get people to start focusing on the fact that U.S. antitrust law is somewhat outdated. It's predicated on the fact that our competition exists only within 50 states rather than within 300 or 150 countries. And we don't have, and we have not looked at our laws to take that into account either. And lastly, we have had very interesting conversations now in the OECD about whether or not we can have some application of we've got some agreements on cartel. What we don't have is any disciplinary mechanism or any dispute settlement process so we can take those cases to some place and get an answer. And that we've been working on for the last several months. And hopefully that's one of the things we'll be able to achieve in this trade process over the next 6 to 12 months. It is a problem. It really is. And you're on the money in suggesting that we've got to deal with it. We haven't come up with the best answer. The only answer we have domestically is protectionist, and we're not very comfortable using it. I'd rather deal with them externally with some multilateral process, but that's possible. That's the best answer. It's not best, then we'll go, if we can't do that, we'll go bilateral. We can't do that. We may be forced to to take a reactive measure here, but that's the last resort. And I don't want to do it unless there is really no conceivable alternative.
I apologize to those of you who still have questions. Mr. Ambassador, for sharing your good sense and your time so generously, we thank you very much.